I'm begging you to manage your time. I'm telling us right now that time management, as famous of a term it is in the media about productivity and achieving success and all these things, I'm here to tell us personally, through my actual experience, that I have seen the benefits of time management like nothing else. And in my formative years, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have these time management principles. Yet lo and behold, I'm also human. And I lost this discipline, this mastery of a skill, just because I wasn't practicing it later on in my life. And I'll be going over the ebbs and the flows, right? The successes and the downfalls of not integrating and keeping up with time management and its principles, and where I am today and where I will be with reintegrating this skill into my life. So, in my formative years, we're talking elementary school, middle school, all these things, right? At around the age of fourth grade to fifth grade, aka 9 to 10 years old, there was something in school that was introduced. It was called a planner, and in some places it's called an agenda. It's essentially, in this case, like a spiral little book with days of the week. And in this, you can write down notes. This is before like smartphones and stuff, or laptops for note taking, or tablets, etc. And you would write, okay, let's say math, you have some homework. Science, you have some homework. Oh, there's a physics experiment, some type of, show and tell type of thing. Okay, that's there, that's happening, a week from now, so we have to do things today. So basically listing out the tasks that we need to do. Now, I knew what I needed to do, right? Just by having this tracking mechanism. But the truth is, I would write things in this planner. I would go outside and play as a kid, and I would never look at this planner/agenda again. So what happened is I basically have this written thing that I'm doing, but if I'm never reviewing it, which is really just the next common sense step, then it's like I'm not even using this planner to its utmost capability. So lo and behold, the important step here is that at least I got to see the scope of work that needs to be done. In other words, out there in the universe, out there in the ether, what are all the things I need to do? And this matters because more than just the subjects that we were studying in school, I would use this as I need to do this task or, do this errand or what have us, right? And that would be a part of the total scope of activities that I need to do. Now, based on this total, what I'm seeing in front of me, there's only so many things that you can do in a finite amount of time. And so when it comes to time management, you can call this a little OCD, but what I used to do, especially with math and practice homework, I would not just write like the date at the top right, I would write the time as well. And I would always have a watch on me and always looking at literally down to the second of where are we in that time. So I would write example 8:56 p.m. and how many seconds? 23 seconds, right? And this, it was a small kind of, maybe you could say, specific kind of ism or thing that I was doing, but actually was so helpful because it took me out of, okay, let me try to get to the next page fastest. It wasn't like I was trying to breeze through pages of just me writing faster and faster. It was me really understanding, okay, a simple example of, okay, well, a math question could be, when you're formative years, right? Like, hey, 6x plus 8 is equal to 14. So you do that math really fast, x is equal to 1. That's kind of like, a few steps, you're done. But when you get into more like higher level math or like physics and stuff like this, there's multiple steps for one question. Like it could be a whole page, it could be 2 pages, just depends on the proof or derivation that you need to, write out, or just the steps to get to what is that, algebraic variable, what is it, what is its value. So all of this to say, I used to be so particular about time, as if it was like the rule of society and the world, that if I didn't do it, if I'm late, I am, useless, I lose my value, all this negative talk if I couldn't stick to the plan. And sticking to the plan is great because it basically gives you that discipline of, hey, I need to do this is why I'm doing it, and if I don't do this, what are the consequences? I didn't realize this framework, but that's what was really going on in the end of the day. So, my elementary, middle, high school, now we're talking college time frame, right? So college time frame, it's like a new chapter, but you're still kind of studying, trying to get out to, get that degree, get that job. I did follow the traditional path, and that's its own video of, well, if it's good or bad or what it means and all this stuff of working 9 to 5, corporate America, all those things. But the angle is that I basically was able to graduate, from one of the best engineering schools in the world, top degree in the world, literally. So industrial engineering from Georgia Tech, and that's great, right? But what happens next, right? What happens next is, well, for me, I was like, okay, degree equals job, and now job was the end goal. because I wasn't thinking much bigger than that. I wanted money. I didn't realize about, hey, business versus a paycheck versus like what is the path of doing all these things. Oh, hey, there's side hustles which we can do, which typically in like Asian households, especially back in the day, now it's maybe more normalized. It would be like, hey, nothing matters. Grades are the only thing that matter. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, the only paths. Go do it, get it done, because later your life will be, immaculate, amazing, full of sparkles and stuff like this, right? Obviously, the economy now and where we are today, and everything with AI and then having a tech background, like all these things, there's a lot of ebbs and flows. But the focus of this video is to say that because I managed my time and what I needed to do, why I needed to do it on time, I was able to get to that, let's say, next step in society, right? Of doing the American dream, which for anyone that doesn't know, it's like, hey, you have a house, maybe a wife, kids, a couple pets, white picket fence, suburban area, good school district, a couple cars, that type of thing, right? So I was like, okay, great. But then reality happened, right? Where this video is not about complaining about the workforce or what we need to do, right? But the fact is, I started working and I was like, what is this nonsense? How can people do this, and not too for 40 years, and not too, at this pay scale where you can't really afford like $1.5 million home in cash if you wanted, because what I didn't know at the time is that's not the path we're on. Right? Maybe you can afford 150K home in cash, 250K if some investments work out, or you have a really high paying job and your savings rate is low, and maybe you're a dink, dual income, no kids. Like that's all great, right? But what hurt me basically is when I went through this process of, seeing the next chapter of life, right? In other words, if I didn't like what I was doing in the moment, what I had realized is when I was younger and I was managing all this time, it was really a form of play for me. That's very important. It was a version of play. And so for me, it didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like, oh man, I gotta do this thing in this time frame, or like if not, it's not gonna happen, or I hate this, or it wasn't any of that. It was like, hey, I'm doing this for a real tangible goal after the fact, and that's awesome, right? That's great because it helped me get to the next step. But when I got to the goal, right, of the job, now I didn't realize, as stupid as it says to say out loud, right? But getting the degree to do the job, for some reason, I always thought the job is like nothing could be as hard as what we went through, like the studying part, right? Or what I didn't realize is you're really being trained to then go work for an extended amount of time on a certain time schedule when things start, like the day starts, the day ends, you have a break in the middle, like all those things are from the school system itself. Like that's the whole training from a young age to say that this is normal. You're basically a trained indentured servant, right? Or in other words, a slave, right? So bringing it back, I started losing myself. Because I was like, I don't feel aligned. This isn't my path. Why am I here? What am I doing? And I used to mope. I used to bitch. I used to complain. I used to moan, and all these things for years and years in my 20s. But what I didn't realize was like I wasn't thinking about the next step. How do you get out? Because what I only saw in front of me was, okay, well, I have to wake up really early and commute and go to this thing that I don't want to, and then come back. And people say, hey, your 9 to 5 is the opportunity to work your 5 to 9. And those 5 to 9, those 4 hours, if you have a side hustle that becomes a main hustle, like it's not really a pure 4 hours. Like if you want to go, not just to the gym, but if you cook meals, if you have to do certain chores, errands, something comes up, oh, you're meeting, let's say a friend in the middle of the week, but it's like a friend that means a lot to you. Like all of these things come up in the schedule. So I started telling myself, well, if I don't have any time to manage, then there's no time management. Like there's nothing to manage because I don't have any free time. So I basically let myself go into believing my identity was like, oh, this is what it is. This is what I am. And like, older me now is like kind of like, what an idiot. But like at the time I didn't know better. I just was like, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself around. So I saw everyone doing what they're doing. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, I guess this is normal, right? And I just accepted it. But I also come from the average of the 5 people around you, where there's billionaires, politicians, celebrities, and that confidence, it had to be re-reminded to me of, okay, no. Whatever thing I'm in right now, whatever system, right? So the job I'm working in, the situation, environment, this is not going to be what I want, what my rich life is, right? It's not going to support that, whether you call it next year or the next year. So I was like, something has to change. So it went from I have no time to manage to then saying, hey, I have all the skills of time management. So even if there's a sliver, this was basically the inflection point of me realizing, hey, I only have, let's say, 75 minutes, right? And I'm like, in this 75 minutes, what can I do? What can I manage that much? Okay, hey, I got to go somewhere silent like a library or a communal space to, record a video, just an example. Okay, well, that eats into that minutes that are left. Okay, by the time I set up, by the time I do this, okay, so I have this many minutes to record, and that too if I'm perfect, and this and that and the other. But the angle was what? The angle is now we just broke up this belief, right? This limiting assumption of I have no time to then saying, hey, there is a sliver of time, right? And then how do we optimize that sliver? And that was a little momentum push to say, it's possible. It's possible. Because that wanted me to free up more time to then manage, to then get on the path again. So then it's either waking up earlier, right? Maybe it's cutting out something. But the truth, my truth is I would just stay up, a lot of coffees, just stay up even later in the night. Maybe I am waking up early, maybe I'm not, but I'm like, hey, even if I'm tired or not, let's keep it going, right? And that was just my mindset. Because I was like, I'm not going to be able to consistently, let's say, wake up for whatever reason, right? So I was like, okay, well, it's up to me to go to sleep. And if I'm tired, I can, alter that. So that was my mindset. Whether it's right or wrong, it's probably not the healthiest, but here we are, right? So I basically was able to have success through managing my time. But then I lost myself in the middle, which if I had a better, bigger goal, because I thought I achieved it, I became stranded on an island of, this is just how it is, right? I wasn't getting any new input because I was like, I'm at the end game. And output wise, I was like, I'm doing something I don't care about, so I'm just doing it. So there's no fulfillment because authority in my own, self, I'm following someone else's time schedule, I'm following orders, I'm following everything. And there's nothing wrong with, being, a follower, right? Like versus a leader, but I identify as a leader. And I was like, this is not the leader's path. This is like a leader within, if you get promoted a bunch of times for this aquarium of a job, but like, it's not like you could keep that forever or not. Like you could, but it's not in your hands if someone acquires a company, fires everybody and has their own people come in for that new version of same company part two. That's not in your control. And that's the real truth of, hey, do you want to be an owner, right? Or an operator or just a worker? Or where do you want to be in the system of, a business process flow? It's very simple. And so when I realized that, I realized like, okay, now there's time. Now I can do certain things. But now, this is literally the most valuable part of the video, which changed my entire life, is it's called this principle, and there's two of them. So one is Eat That Frog. So I think it's a book, I'm not sure by who, to be frank, off the top of my head. But Eat That Frog is basically saying, hey, what is the worst thing you could do in a day? Right? And so the expression is, like eating a frog, right? So if you have to eat a frog, eating that frog as the first thing you have to do, right, is basically the thing that if you conquer it, everything else is seamless and easy. So it's not easy to implement because the thing that you don't want to do the most, you kind of put it off typically. So then eating that frog is doing the one thing, right? Like first get it over with, or the highest leverage activity, right? And the second part of this is literally just giving like a priority rank to what you need to do. So as common sense as it sounds, literally saying, hey, these are the things I need to do, but then A, B, C, D, in terms of what's actually important. So the framework is, an A level item. So trying to make up, a good plan in real time. Think about this video, right? If I don't record this now, right, then I can't ever upload it. So let's say in this little mini project scope, okay, the thing that if I don't do it today, like tomorrow, there's not a next step. So today, the A level item is I need to record this video. Okay, the B level is maybe, if you don't do something today, nothing, major is going to happen or not as much as an A, but it's still pretty important. But it's in a B because it's not like as urgent ASAP, but it's pretty important. So maybe a B level task is after I, record this, maybe I, kind of cut it down, kind of just simply edit it in the software to then upload it, right? And C is, there's basically consequences, right, of not doing something. So in other words, if I don't edit anything, right, I just like put this video up raw, right? Like what you don't see is maybe in the beginning I cut out some stuff, maybe at the end, right, whatever, or maybe in the middle as well, right? So overall point being, it's like, okay, there are consequences if I don't do this. And D is called delegate. It's basically you can delegate something away. So if I was editing this like, a big, different type of video, like a Mr. Beast video, then that would be so different. And that's not necessarily my skill set. And nor do I want to be the number one editor. But the point is that's something you can delegate, and then you have free up time for maybe a higher leverage activity. In other words, if you have a workflow like an editor doing, the editing, then I can go record the next, piece of work, right, for their pipeline in terms of what they need to execute. So the point is, time management, it's not just about the time or, hey, I'm blocking my schedule or all these things. It's about what you're doing with, the time that you have in a priority order. And as simple as this is going to sound, it is the biggest hack. It's called basically the managing of energy, right? Where, in other words, maybe there is a task that's so high leverage, right? But it also takes 1.5 hours. And it's the eat that frog kind of thing. It is the frog, right? But it also takes up so much that 1.5 hours is like maybe 3.5 hours of, brain space, just, whatever that task is, right? So the question is, yeah, it's going to be really hard to do it in the morning, and it's an extraneous task, and it may actually make a bunch of things on your plate kind of, get pushed off just because maybe how you feel later, maybe you need a break, whatever, right? So think about this. You do this activity at the end of the day, you're probably not going to have the highest quality of product, assuming you wake up in the morning, typically speaking. You do this activity in the middle of the day, maybe you had some progress in the morning, maybe you didn't do anything because you're preparing for this middle thing, and then the second/third half of the day becomes nothing because you spent this energy in the middle. So it all comes back to front loading everything, whether that's in the earliest of the morning, whether it's the first thing in the morning, whatever, right? It's about executing it because you have to do it. And if you don't do it, what happens? There's going to be time that keeps on going, but there's nothing to manage because you didn't get to the next step. So the key is understanding this type of framework where if you don't, it's okay, but you got to start practicing it. Because I was very lucky to start practicing it early, but if you tell me if I never managed my time, if I was just dilly-dallying the whole time, and then suddenly someone says, hey, this is how you're supposed to do things, in a timely fashion, blah, 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 you're just not used to it. Because like school and the government and that type of thing, construct will manage your time when it wants you and needs you. But in your off time, there's no like boss or someone saying, hey, you better do this and that. So you have to do it. So I'm begging you to manage your time, because if I was in the shoes of you, right, 10 years younger, 15 years younger, and especially 5 years younger, this same video would have helped me that much because I wouldn't be able to be where I am today without it. And so fast forward, this last part sponsored by me. I'm basically an investor outside of everything. Stock market, crypto, real estate is a bread and butter. And managing time is literally, whether you call it a worker mindset or a business mindset, time is like, how do you not manage it? In other words, if you have nothing you're striving for or goals, you're never going to get there. So flip that, and when you have something you're going for, it will always, generally speaking, feel like, oh, there's never enough time because, oh, it's only 24 hours. Like, oh, I want to do more. I want to do more. And that's like a great thing, to exist. So lo and behold, I love, the travel and reward space on credit cards and stuff. And then we have the main channel. So this is the second channel. And the point is, this is where I get to freely talk about more topics like this, about how to get what you want versus just okay, now you're in the system and have money, and now how can you optimize and invest and save money and do other things. So this is basically saying, if I want to invest into a hotel project which has cash flows and I can own property, right? If it's a Marriott, Wyndham, IHG, Hilton, all these guys, I can't just knock on a door. I can't just say, hey, I want to invest. Like, here's my money, take it. No, there's steps, there's certain, procedures. And yeah, I can buy the stock in the stock market. But when you get an opportunity to say, hey, that hotel over there, I'm an owner of the land underneath the building, which means it's literally in your name. And I own property like a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or a certain amount of square feet, right? So you basically have land that is basically going to be appreciation. It's going to be having appreciation. Why? Because it's being developed from scratch. Then on top of that, it's a commercial property. And in terms of those, like the selling and controlling of the cash flows, like you can't have that opportunity. I can't go buy a Marriott or a Westin property room, right, and just control, that cash flow or get a piece of the pie. So this is basically saying, like, hey, you have ownership and you have monthly cash flow. And imagine if, the construction has started for this project, investments start from 15K up to 3 mil USD, depending where you're watching from. But guess what? Fast forward, right, is usually when the project is complete, you get cash flows. But there's a way to start getting paid today, month over month, because the headline is that there's a link in the description below. Happy to talk with us one-on-one, right? It's a 15-minute chat. We can take longer. It's a good thing. And if it's not about this project, you just want to chat about life or other things, I'm happy to get to know us that much more. because I'm looking at this as more of a community field and not just like a one and done. I'm thinking decades out. So with all that said, thanks for coming this far. Like, share, subscribe, all the things. I'll leave a video over here. With that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.